that the Diablo area would have shrunk as more games were added. And of course, there's no perfect formula to figure this out, but I did a very, very gross calculation to adjust for inflation, as it were, and these are the results we get when we account for that. Basically, it's a lot less depressing. Note that 2013-2014 included Hearthstone and Heroes of the Storm, while 2015 and 16 included Overwatch as well. So, accounting for the extra game, Diablo 3's area at BlizzCon 2016 is about the same as its area at 2014, which is only about a third smaller than 2011 back before the launch of Diablo 3. And the 2016 area is about 70% bigger than it was in 2015. Now here's another interesting thing to note. If you look back through all the years, the area was always called Diablo 3. Diablo 3, Diablo 3, Diablo 3, but this year, it just says Diablo. While this could mean nothing, it could also mean that maybe there'll be Diablo 1 and Diablo 2 to play in celebration of the anniversary, be it remastered versions or just originals. Apart from show floor space, we can take a look at how much show time is devoted to Diablo 3 versus the other properties. Now, I ran some numbers to compare across the various Blizzard games to see who gets the most attention, who gets the least, and for this, I ignored all the tournaments, all the show matches, everything like that, because it's not a fair comparison. Diablo doesn't have anything like that, so of course, if you include that, Diablo's gonna look absolutely minuscule. So when you do the tally, it seems that both Diablo and Hearthstone are tied for last place with respect to main stage time at 45 minutes and panel time with 2 hours of panels. The thing is, Hearthstone has a whole hall dedicated to its tournaments. So I don't know that it's fair to say that they're really tied for last place in that regard. However, you do also have to account for the after party. You see, Blizzard announced its Blizzard 25th anniversary and Diablo 20th anniversary party at BlizzCon 2016. The party will be Friday night, it'll last 2 hours, and it'll be outside the convention center, open to everyone who's in the area. Because it's split between 25 years of Blizzard and 20 years of Diablo, we can't just chalk this all up to Diablo time, and we don't know what the split will be. But it does seem to be branded a little bit more towards being a Diablo event. Also, if you take a bit of a closer look at the image, you'll note something maybe interesting about the Diablo art. Reddit user Architect pointed out that that demon looks very similar to the demon that holds your health globe in Diablo 3. And he made this side-by-side comparison image, where on the left we have the health globe, and on the right, that art that we see in the marketing image. Now, they bear a striking similarity, but there's definite differences. The Diablo one seems more cartoony, is the term that most people use when they're describing Diablo 3's visuals, relative to the other one that seems more gritty, more realistic. Now, some people think that this might be artwork for the new UI of some kind of new game or something. They're obviously not going to change the Diablo 3 UI at this point, so it has to be a new something. But it could very easily just be older artwork. This could have been either concept art or some early development artwork for the Health Globe Demon for Diablo 3 that just never made it to launch. You know, they changed art direction at some point to go less gritty, less realistic, more painterly, more stylized. And so this could have just been a leftover art asset from that. Now, interesting to note, in the write-up for the celebration party, Blizzard says we'll have some great food, special anniversary-themed drinks, entertainment, and even a surprise or two. As much as I'd love to believe that that surprise or two is Diablo 4, they wouldn't be making a big announcement like that at the party, outside of the convention. Again, all the major news is going to happen right at the opening ceremony. So what could be a Diablo-themed surprise or two? I don't know, but maybe a surprise visit from some of the Diablo 2 lead devs? Now, on October 6th, David Brevik released this tweet. Where is Dave today? And that is a picture of the exterior of Blizzard headquarters. Bill Roper then replied to that tweet with his own picture, saying same place that he was. Now, David Brevik was co-founder and president of Blizzard North, the guys who made Diablo 1 and Diablo 2. Brevik was a senior designer on Diablo, and was a project and design lead on Diablo 2. As for Bill Roper, he was a producer on Diablo 1, senior producer on Diablo 2, and he was the vice president of Blizzard North when he left the company in 2003. These two guys were instrumental to the Diablo series, and we go over why they left Blizzard in this video here. We also talk about a ton of people who left Blizzard over the years to start their own companies, and what happened to them, what games they made. But in short, these two guys were working on Diablo 3 along with Blizzard North when they left Blizzard altogether in 2003, and they went off to create their own game studio and release, eventually, Hellgate London, which is sort of a sci-fi third-person Diablo game. Now, some theorize that they were at Blizzard headquarters because they were being hired back by Blizzard to work on another Diablo project. A more likely theory was that they were being invited to Blizzard headquarters by Blizzard in order to try out a Diablo 2 remaster, you know, kind of get their blessing. But what's most likely is that there'll be special guests at the Diablo party. They'll probably give a talk about the history of Diablo, that kind of thing. Now, before we wrap up this video, I just want to touch on one final thing that it's probably nothing, but some people are talking about it. There's a new BlizzCon Diablo shirt that's been made available in the Blizzard shop. You can see it here. It's a pretty cool design, and it's named Diablo 3 Realms of Evil T. And for any non-native English speakers, T is just short for t-shirt. Now, some people are freaking out about this shirt. They think Realms of Evil will be the name of the next Diablo 3 expansion. It seems pretty odd for Blizzard to announce that via t-shirt in their shop, or for Blizzard to screw up this way and leak it like that. Also, a viewer named James Davies pointed me towards some artwork on the Sons of the Storm website, which is a website where a few Blizzard artists post their artwork, and you can see that this image was made in 2011, or possibly earlier, but it's got the 2011 Blizzard Entertainment copyright on it. Of course, this doesn't preclude that they're using old artwork for a new expansion, a new content, but it just seems a bit unlikely. It seems it's just a really cool image that they wanted to put on a shirt. But a Reddit user named Mac Shuffle did some digging through the source code, and he found that the keywords associated with the shirt are Diablo 3, Realms of Evil, We Love Fine Apparel Men's. And he goes on to point out that items in the shop that have Reaper of Souls in the title also have Reaper of Souls as the tag right after Diablo 3. So could this be the next expansion? It's within the realm of possibility. It's not very likely. What might be more likely is that this is some kind of maybe bundled edition. You know, for the console we had the Ultimate Evil edition of Diablo 3, so maybe Realms of Evil will bundle all 3 Diablo games, or maybe Realms of Evil even refers to some major content patch that will include Diablo 1 and Diablo 2 within Diablo 3, sort of as rifts or other areas, as a lot of people have been suggesting to Blizzard as a good idea. For Season 8, Andariel Wings are one of the rewards that you can get for the season, which could serve to help bridge that gap and take us, you know, introduce the concept of playing Diablo 2 and Diablo 3, but it's probably just a t-shirt. That wraps up this video though, folks. Leave a comment with your thoughts on all this. What do you think? Will there be any announcements at BlizzCon, and if so, what will those announcements be? Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch and Patreon supporters for making these videos possible. Check out these other videos, and subscribe to join Rikers Rangers to stay informed on Diablo news.
This just in, breaking news. As of today, September 30th, it has been announced that Season 7 will end on Friday, October 14th, and Season 8 will begin Friday, October 21st. What could this premature ending of Season 6 signify? What could the lack of PTR and abrupt start of Season 8 mean?
Diablo, the game that changed it all, pushing dialogue, storyline, and downtime to the backseat and bringing tense, fast-paced real-time action to the forefront. Diablo set the standard of action RPG design for decades. Though it was by no means the first time to accelerate and streamline the RPG formula, it was by far the most popular one to do so. Diablo 2 stole that crown and pretty much outdid the original in just about every way. More classes, environments, loot, and a greater scope in environments, abilities, and combat made the first game all but obsolete. It had such a lasting attraction that the Diablo Battle Chest still landed on top 10 lists of best-selling PC games a decade after release. Many things happened between the second and third game, including a complete scrap of the original Diablo 3 prototype and the mass leaving of the entire team that developed the first 2 games. So when the long-awaited threequel arrived, This new game, from a completely different team, was, as you would expect, very different from what the fanbase anticipated. Years later, and after game-changing patches and an expansion pack, we have a much better game for it, but major differences and controversial design decisions remain. I've played all 3 games on both their PC and console versions, and I have clocked hundreds of hours on them in total. But this will be coming from the mindset of a medium-core player of both single-player and multiplayer with friends. I'm making this video to go over as fairly as possible the elements Diablo 2 and Diablo 3 did better in my opinion. And with whispers of a new entry coming to the series, perhaps we can take a look at what can be learned from successes and mistakes of the past. I give you Diablo 2 versus Diablo 3. Both games have cinematics before each act, but there's a difference here. Diablo 2 cinematics focused on the Wanderer's actions, and building up the anticipation for what's to come. This made way for the player to tell their story through the gameplay more so than the cinematics. Diablo 3's story was brought to life by beautiful cinematics, sadly focused on Leah's disparate story, which after lots of character development was a letdown when she became the titular antagonist in a surprise Act 4. Though both games feature solid and well-produced soundtracks, most gamers would agree that Matt Ullman's haunting, high-reverb combination of soft choir, low piano keys, and famous guitar riffs of the first 2 games is Diablo incarnate. While turning the music off for Diablo 2, I noticed something interesting. I could hear a draft of wind in some areas, faint screams and echoes of things off in the distance, the patter of footsteps all around the environment, and the slight burning sound of a nearby torch. All these things are minor overall, but really added a sense of space and atmosphere to the game. Diablo 2's tone was pitch black, reading about the horror stories and untold evils that have plagued the world many times over, stories of baths of virgin blood, gore-painted arenas, and putrid enemies. The sense of lingering horror was paramount. On the other hand, Diablo 3's tone is all over the place. You have biblical corruption yarns, loot goblins, fallen angels, and butterfly witches. The graphic style also clearly took some visual cues from the more pleasant and agreeable World of Warcraft graphics, with rounder shapes, brighter colors, and softer edges.
And so it came to pass that the Countess, who once bathed in the rejuvenating blood of 100 virgins, was buried alive, and her castle, in which so many cruel deeds took place, fell rapidly into ruin. Rising over the buried dungeons in that god-forsaken wilderness, a solitary tower, like some monument to evil, is all that remains. The Countess's fortune was believed to be divided among the clergy, although some say that more remains unfound, still buried alongside the rotting skulls that bear mute witness to the inhumanity of the human creature.
With a thicker and more unique atmosphere with a story that stays out of your way, Diablo 2 takes this one hands down. Always a focal point of the Diablo series, loot could be found in chests, be bought at stores, or drop off enemies with thousands of combinations of magical effects. I feel the rarity and power algorithm in Diablo 2 was just about right, where rare and legendary items were just uncommon enough to seem valuable, but not too frequent so as to lose importance and become boring. You could also penny pinch, sell items at stores and save up to buy a good item at the shops or gamble on an item of unknown value at certain vendors. Conversely, Diablo 3 started out downright loot-starved in its original release. After playing it for dozens of hours, I never organically received a single legendary item, only to go buy a few in the broken economy of the auction house. Blizzard later realized the error of their ways and in my opinion overcorrected that. They killed the auction house and made item drops way more generous, making it commonplace in later levels to see 2, sometimes 3 legendaries drop off a single creature. Shops are made pretty useless in 3 as well, being that almost all items sell for a similar, lowly price and sell mostly lower end items, making crafting your only non-combat option for better loot. There were lots of little mechanics in 2 that were removed in 3, like keys to unlock certain chests, and needing lots of time portal and identify scrolls, of having some sort of risk reward or trade for identifying items, and I stand by that concept as being a solid one, but after a while it does become rote. Diablo 3 removes these consumables, making the concept of identifying an item sort of pointless. Diablo 2 had a plethora of potions of all types and sizes, and there were also a couple potions that were pretty useless for the most part, such as ones for stamina and thawing. Diablo 3 removed all potions entirely, with only a single cooldown-based potion in its stead. It incentivized passive skill build and item-based restoration. It also introduced health orbs that drop from enemies. This arcade game-like design philosophy was stated during development interviews as well. Probably the most bewildering mechanic introduced in Diablo 2 was the stamina bar, or how I like to call it, the jog blocker. Very little was developed around it, so it really became a limiter to progression for no reason. Running drained stamina, whereas walking or waiting or drinking stamina potions refilled it. That's it. Pretty useless. Despite my misgivings with the loot system and the now pointless identification, I'd have to say this one overall goes to Diablo 3. Every level you gained in Diablo 2 gave you attribute points to permanently enhance the core statistics of your character. Similarly with the skill tree, one must spend points to gain skills and unlock new ones at specific level milestones. Diablo 3 did away with choice of progression altogether, with only tiny improvements added late game with a patch, and made skills switchable on the fly once unlocked by level only. This means that every character at each level is more or less identical, save for loadout and equipment. On one hand, the idea of experimenting with lots of active abilities, variants, and passives is good fun, and can keep combat and exploring your character's abilities fresh and fun. On the other, it handles more like the loadout system of a modern multiplayer shooter than an RPG, where you would make permanent choices that decide the future of your character's specialty. As far as skill customization goes, Diablo 3 certainly has a wider selection of skill variants, although a portion become obsolete when compared to others. Despite this though, many players report that there are only a couple viable late builds for each class, claiming that there are more potentially useful builds in Diablo 2. This is compounded by the simplification of item stats primarily into a few core attributes, with a big DPS value shown on all weapons, rather than needing to get into the nitty-gritty of what the item does. This is also due to a huge difference between the way the games handle weapons. In Diablo 2, weapons were generally your default attack and you'd use it as you might think. You shoot arrows, you throw throwing knives, you slash with swords, etc. Your weapon was your mana-free backup attack for all classes, and a primary staple for melee builds. In Diablo 3 though, your vanilla weapon attack is basically unused. It is replaced by a growing set of mana-free abilities that turn what would be a bow and arrows into a jar of spiders, a spear into a lightning strike, a mace into a fireball. You get the idea. All abilities become simply greater or lower percentages of your weapon damage. This single-handedly makes your weapon the most important factor of your entire character. Diablo 2's late-game damage and effect numbers run into the hundreds and eventually low thousands. Diablo 3 gets decidedly more exponential, and gets into the billions for seemingly no other reasons but to be impressive. Also, for a game that prides itself for being streamlined, how you determine your actual damage based on your stats and weapons is a bit like voodoo, and you just have to trust the game's stat increase up or down arrow to tell if it will improve your character, rather than scrutinize an item's particular effects. There are many more types of slotted item fillers such as jewels, which are similar to Diablo 3's legendary gems later on, runes, which could be combined in unique ways to make powerful rune words, and more, which were simplified in Diablo 3 for a 5-color gem system. There were also charms, which would give you a buff in exchange for cluttering up your inventory. The end result of all this is pretty clear though. In Diablo 2, you would tailor your equipment loadout around your permanently developed character. In Diablo 3, you tailor your character ability loadout around your all-powerful equipment. Though I love the skill variance and amount of choice 3 presents you, the loadout system breaks the immersion of building a character, and the DPS-focused design turns the game into an exercise in number building. Diablo 2 wins this round. This is an obvious one, but when you make a game a decade later, you're going to have much more power to work with and much more advanced tools, engines, and previous experience at your fingertips as a developer. Diablo 2 was a little behind the times even in 2000, with the retention of fairly low-res 2D sprites and fixed resolutions, all the while running at a choppy 25 frames per second. Diablo 3 has higher frame rates, resolutions, and true polygonal graphics, making for a more visually pleasing game and more responsive combat. Work was also done to the UI and key mapping, allowing more abilities to be used with a single button press, rather than the frantic switching of your right-click ability using the F keys or mouse wheel that Diablo 2 suffered. The idea that all your characters are bound to your account and have shared storage too makes for a much more seamless experience as well. Diablo 3's always online nature defended against cheaters much better, but because of that, it cannot be played offline even if going it solo. That also means that modding or custom campaigns that have been made for the original two games are nigh impossible for the third entry at this time. Strangely too, because of the online nature of Diablo 3, trading has been severely hindered due to legendary items and higher level gems being account bound, which has drawn ire from the old school community. Now that the servers work, and due to the huge technological leaps between the two games, I'll have to say that this one goes to Diablo 3.